Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Brain or Shine webinar. I'm Mark, this is Jules, and we have Aidan on one side, depending on which way you're looking at the screen. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll let Aidan introduce himself in a moment. So the theme we've been talking about has been around challenges, hasn't it?
Yeah, the difficulties that people face following a brain injury, and the difficulties, obviously, for the person sustaining the brain injury. But these difficulties, there is that lovely ripple effect, and it goes to the carers, the families, the children, your friends, work colleagues. It just goes on and on, really. So it really is trying to get an understanding of what these are and what the effects are, and also some ways to deal with them.
Absolutely. And we're really delighted to have Aidan with us here today. Now, we met Aidan at some point in the past, because I don't have a great deal of concept of time, but it was definitely in the last couple of years through a headway training session, which was really, really fantastic. And we attended this, and Aidan was hosting it, which was fabulous. So we thought we'd invite you along today, Aidan. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate that. And also, of course, you have a brain injury, and I'll let you explain that in a moment. But we thought it was really, really important to share more lived experiences from your point of view as well. And obviously, you have kids at home and so on. So you can maybe touch on something that we don't have young children here. So there's lots of sort of stuff we can talk. Yeah, we have grandchildren, but they're not around us all the time. But first of all, I wanted you to, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you suffered your brain injury, really.
Cool. So I'm Aidan Price. I'm somebody who's worked in supply chain for about 25 years, but I kind of guess that's the kind of more boring part of me. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not a doctor, but as you said, I have suffered a brain injury. I play sports. I'm not very good at rugby. I wasn't before the brain injury, so it was a good excuse to stop it, to be perfectly honest. I played golf. Wasn't really good at that either, but I still, for some reason, crack on with that. As you said, I'm married with 2 children. My youngest is actually going to be celebrating his 3rd birthday in a week's time, which helps me remember because it is literally just then and it's there. My eldest is 6. So my brain injury occurred about 3 years ago. And so for context, my eldest knew me before, as much as the 3-year-old knows a parent at that particular point. But something like I'm quite kind of keen to emphasize at times. My youngest doesn't know any different. I've always been this person to him. And, I've been married for quite a long time. So you've got that element of, do you know what? My life, my world was in a good place. I've just moved jobs, just moved house. And then on the 5th of November 2021, which is genuinely, it's easy to remember, forgetting the remember bit. It genuinely is easy to remember. I slipped at home. So in my house, I slipped and fell just on the floor, hit my head on the wall, and my wife had to do CPR on me, and she called an ambulance. Now, the rugby humour in me kicks in a lot here around the fact that she called an ambulance. They were going to send an air ambulance out, but frustratingly for me, I mean, I live right next to a big field, so they could have landed it there quite comfortably. But frustratingly for me, the air ambulance came in a car, but there were 4 ambulance-y, paramedic-y vehicles parked up outside the house. I'm lucky, and we're lucky, or Nick was lucky, that my youngest stayed asleep during this period, because I genuinely can't compute as to how doing CPR on your husband, not knowing what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, or whatever, with a kid crying, works. But my rugby humour also kicks in the other way to turn around and say that quite openly, we just moved house, we'd just got a dog. We were, my wife was pregnant, expecting our next one kind of in a few months or time. And so what's the best way to get some peace and quiet? Slip over, hit your head on the wall, be in induced coma for about 8 weeks, I think it was. And then wake up just before Christmas and moan at people for the fact that you can't be home for Christmas. And there's and humor aside, one of the bad bits that I know I did was the fact that I was blaming my wife for me not being allowed home at Christmas, and that was all because of something that a doctor had said, where part A, part B were fine and clear, but part C and D weren't. But they didn't mention part C and D, so I was like, well, what's the problem? Release me. You then get some of the other bits that they give you these little bits of information in the hospital that I'm quite capable of holding on to a little piece of information and repeating it back to annoy people normally. But the other way, so some people find it a funny story, others won't, and I'll leave it to you to decide how the nurse actually felt. But they're telling you that they're wanting to test your memory and understand those bits. And 5 minutes later, they're asking me why I wasn't drinking coffee. So, touched on it. I've worked in supply chain for a while. I used to sit next to a coffee buyer. So I know quite a bit about coffee. So I decided to tell this young nurse all of the information about what they were doing wrong with their coffee making process, why I wasn't drinking their coffee, what they could do to improve it, how they could do it, which with hindsight, I don't think was the best method of getting out there as quickly as I could. You know, similarly, when they take you to a shop, so I was in Addenbrooke's Hospital. It's attached to a shopping centre type bit. So you do a shopping trip with the occupational health person. They asked me how I found it. Me talking to them about how the particular retailer had merchandised the stock and they can consider the customer flow appropriately and stuff like that. Again, probably isn't really the answer they were looking for.
No.
How long were you actually in hospital for, Aidan?
I was in hospital for just over 2 months.
Wow.
And then I moved to rehab.
Yeah.
For about 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing, really, because I mean, yours and my accidents are very, very similar, where we basically just fell, and there doesn't seem to be any reason behind why we end up with a brain injury, and it's that moment where your life completely changes. And I don't know about you, but did you sort of feel in those early days of why has this happened, and there's a difficulty of acceptance as to why it's happened?
Yeah, and or you know, and at risk of making myself sound silly with hindsight, but that bit that says, you know, not being funny. I've played a bit of rugby before. I've had a head injury before. It's not really a problem. Let me crack on. Let me get on with it. Let me, you know. And one of the bits that I know I've said to you before, you know, and even in those early stages, I kind of thought about it then, but the more you kind of know it now, the fact that it's a hidden disability and three quarters of it is hidden to yourself. So don't be stupid in trying to hide the fact that it's hidden, because it's already hidden enough without you hiding the other bits. But yeah, you know, I was the person when they're getting you to do some pickup exercises and they're genuinely testing you on an awful lot of bits. And one of them randomly, it was an American football type thing that they were getting me to pick up standing on one leg. And I was like, well, not being funny, I would have taken that quite a lot in the rugby world. If I had that sort of level of balance, I would have been playing in the back row for Wales quite a lot. But it is tricky, because the bit that you kind of had to deal with was almost when you came out of hospital. So the rehab bit, I was lucky to an extent. The people at the rehab were quite accepting of the fact that it was a post-COVID world, but not really a post-COVID world. It was kind of an in-COVID world. Because I'd been in the hospital with no COVID reported in the hospital or anything like that, I was still stuck in a hotel room. And, you know, it's fine for people like you who love your exercises and love to do all your really random exercise things. But me doing wall sits and press ups just because Otherwise, I've got to watch another episode of Loose Women or hear the latest bit on the BBC News channel about what injections I'm going to have from a COVID perspective. It wasn't fun, but I was lucky that one of the nurses was very aware of that rule and was quite happy to take me out for a walk. And when I say take me out for a walk, I mean, you're still right on the edge of an industrial area, but at the same time, going for that was kind of that release of some of the endorphins in there of I just want some fresh air.
Yeah.
But bringing that to the home environment, I fell over at the bottom of the stairs. The key part to that is at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what was written on my notes was that I was found at the bottom of the stairs. They assumed that I'd probably fallen down the stairs. So my, if you like, PTSD, for want of a better expression, was I was very nervous about going down the stairs. Again, humour can take over this bit quite easily. I found showering quite tricky because actually, where was my memory taking me to? Well, my first shower in the hospital was with a nurse standing there with you, trying to help you, and you have to sit down after a certain amount of time, because the bit that I found really annoying, and I still find really annoying, is you have all of those wonderful brain experts and all that sort of stuff on the ward and stuff like that, and I lost all of this weight in my legs, but I didn't lose it from here. And that would lose it from. But
I kind of get that one because, it's like Mark. He still has to go and use the toilet. It's
I fell over in the toilet, so it's like
he still has to go and do that. However, sometimes he forgets, and he might go somewhere, not particularly a toilet or whatever, but I'm assuming that he'll be back in 10 minutes or half an hour. And then sometimes he's gone for a lot longer. And those panicky moments in me start because I start thinking, what's happened? And I remember how it made me feel when he had his accident.
Yeah.
And then I have to start ringing people and where is he? Is he all right?
The first insight tip.
I've got a phone tracker, so I can.
Exactly that. I was just about to say my first inside tip, and from a relationship perspective, this worked very well in the sense that when I got home, taking a dog out for a walk, your legs are still trying to get used to it, etc. But I was going to go and pick up my eldest from school. Take the dog for a walk. They're just in the next village. It's not a problem. It's okay. I got lost. And this is genuinely true, as much as I've tried to use humour for an awful lot of bits here. I ring my wife up and say, you're going to have to get him from school, and can you potentially get me? But I don't know where I am. And I'm literally, and she's like, well, where are you? And I'm like, I'm in a field somewhere, and I'm going to come out onto a road, in like half a mile or whatever, but don't know what that road is. There's a car on that road, if that helps, And what we now do is whenever I'm taking the dog out or anything like that, I'll share my location on WhatsApp. So she can see it. I'm lucky that she's an Android user and I'm an iPhone user, so she can't track me all the time, which helps.
But I think with Mark, he doesn't get lost. He doesn't have that. But one of the things that he's not very good at is being conscious of time. Yeah. Are you?
No, not.
And he'll think, well, I've only been gone 5 minutes, but to me, and I'm watching, I think actually you've been gone an hour, and I am really worried now.
and somebody on the headway call I was on yesterday was saying about that, and it's that bit like if you kind of on the headway bits that we do, they kind of say about rating your knowledge of brain injury, and we've had many a chat about many a different bit, but I'm still about 2 out of 5. I've got fair knowledge. I'm learning a bit more, and the more but almost that the more I learn, the less I understand. Because why is it that Mark has an ambivalence over time, and yet forget the fact that I'd worked in supply chain for so long, I am now so time precious. So that element of sharing my location, I will tell somebody that I'm going to go and pick them up on the way to the gym. I will share my location at the point I leave, because I'm paranoid about what time am I going to get there and am I going to get there in time. And to put that again, true story, but with an element of funniness to it. I remember meeting a mate for a takeaway before Christmas, and it'd always been that bit of like, we'll meet at 7:30. Is that 7:30 Mark's time or 7:30 is Aidan's time? Because they're very different. And I must have messaged him about 14 times to say that actually I'm going to be a little bit late now, a little bit late now, a little bit late now. And I've shared bits, and he's like, that never used to be you. You would never have done that. And likewise, a week or so later, I'd said to him that I was going to, and this is again genuinely true, I was going to be at his at 1:38, and at 1:36 I pulled up outside his house, and I waited 2 minutes before knocking on his door. Genuinely true, and
wow,
in the nicest way, he's somebody that I would be quite happy to knock on his door at any time of day or night, and yet for whatever reason in my head was, no, don't do it.
It is fascinating how that happens, and I mean, I've had this experience with time as well, because I remember at some point in the past, before I got my support, which was 6 years after my brain injury, I remember I was planning to do a run with some friends, and I knew that they were coming, or one of the lads was coming to pick me up at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was. And Jules went, "Oh, where are you going today?" And I went, "I don't know. I got no idea where we were going." So sometimes things like that would slip, those really important details. And the other thing that happens from time to time is, say we've got we're meeting some friends at 5:30. I'll be saying to Jules, "Oh, we're meeting them at 6, aren't we?" And she's like, "No, we're meeting them at 5:30. That's great. So all the way through the day, I'm planning for 6 o'clock, and I can't get 5:30 into my head. It won't change. So the amount of times I'll say to Jules, it is 6, isn't it? It's definitely 6. And I'll look at my calendar and it says 5:30 in there. And that time will just not lodge into my mind. So sometimes I can be out by half an hour, 3/4 an hour a day, whatever.
And all the amount of times you think you've said something, the amount of times you think you've said, "Oh yeah, they're coming around at 1:30."
Yeah.
And we use an app called, I think it's called Family Wall, where it's now kind of like a shared diary, where we'll put in when my hospital appointment is, etc., etc. But the amount of times you have to then also, there's certain bits where I'll make sure that Nick's available for as well, because actually if it's a complicated conversation, I'm not going to cope with it. I'm not going to understand it. And or not that I'm going to lie about it. I'm not going to be able to reveal the full truth as to what. And Jules is nodding in the nicest way because she gets to see it, because it's that bit of, yeah, mate, you think you've done all right today, but actually you've waffled on a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's times where I've gone to something, I've known exactly what I'm going to say. I mean, it could be something as simple as just a conversation with a friend, to a medical appointment, to, I don't know, sorting out something, a legal document or a work document or something like that. I know exactly what I'm going to say, and then when we get there, I've missed a third of it out, and Jules will fill the rest of it in. Or I'll just say, you just do the talking.
Or the other thing, it is a simple question that I could ask him. Often we'll only need something like, "Yeah, that's great." But then I get a complete essay, War and Peace. And I think, no, I just want a yes or no.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I got offered speech and language therapy, and again, genuinely, the Mickey taking person in me says, "Good luck to the person who had to try and just get me to talk," and that was their job, was just getting to talk about this, that, and everything else. But the true reality is, and again, I'd had a conversation, should we just say, with them about the fact that they were saying that I wasn't thinking before I was saying something. I said, well, clearly I am. Take the coffee as an example, because let's be clear, I'm not just able to have that information to hand. I'm thinking about what it is. I'm thinking about executing that bit. They're like, no, you're not thinking about the fact that Jules has yawned 3 times whilst you were saying it. And when the speech and language person said that they were going to help with that, and I was genuinely not deliberately dismissive, but good luck with correcting that, because I've been doing that since I was 1.
Yeah.
And actually, it's something that I've gone back to relatively recently to try and correct, because do you know what? It is something that is worse, because one of the bits that I found is that certain traits that I had have been accentuated. So again, we can play the, Aidan, it's good that you throw off a dad joke. You always used to throw off a dad joke. How is it that after a significant brain injury, you can think that quickly and deliver it that quickly? But actually, I can think about it that quickly, but I haven't thought about the fact that this is completely the wrong environment to deliver that dad joke.
I've had that. I think as well, it's that real strange thing where I can recall facts and stuff that happened 25, 30 odd years ago, but I can't remember something that happened 5 minutes ago. And I think that's the really weirdest thing about brain injury, certainly for me in the early days, because nobody explained to Jules or I that would be something that would happen. So, of course, we'd have a conversation and Jules would say, well, I've told you that. And I'm thinking, well, I don't remember that at all. In fact, we've even had this conversation today. So we're meeting some friends a little bit later. And I remember Jules saying this morning, I've messaged our friends to say about, do they want to meet up later on? We're picking them up from the airport. So it's like after we pick them up from the airport, do they want to go out for something to eat? That was the last bit of the conversation I remember. What I don't remember is Jules said, they said yes. So we are going out tonight, meeting them and having something to eat. Yeah. But then if she asked me who, won the 1983 FA Cup final, I could tell you that. It was Manchester United and they beat Brighton 4-0 or something like that. You know, it's ridiculous stuff like that. And I think in the early days, that was so frustrating because I was convinced I was making it up. Yeah. Never mind what other people must have been thinking.
Wow. Charlotte, thank you so much for putting that. Interrupting becomes worse for you following your brain injury. We have that issue too. I totally get and understand that. And sometimes Mark can be quite good at not interrupting. And then we go through a period of time where I can't even get halfway through my sentence. And he's like that. And I'm thinking, you've missed the most important bit that I was going to say. It is quite difficult, that interrupting. And thank you for sharing that, Charlotte.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, because you get that bit as well where to almost again, to the Jules point that you get to see it kind of manifesting itself. But guess what? I'm going to be worse at that when I haven't rested. So from a headway perspective, we'll talk about think of it like a mobile phone. Charge your phone before a busy weekend or before a busy event and stuff like that. But actually, I think there's another angle to that. Think of how many apps you might have open on that phone. And actually, you're doing that. There's that screen there. There's that screen there. The snooker's on there. The Paw Patrol is on there with the kid or whatever. You're doing this there. And it's like, actually, just have that rest. And what does that rest look like for me? It quite often is that shutting my eyes or having a ridiculous TV program that I've seen so many times before that it can be on in the background and I don't need to watch it, but it's almost that music element of it's the white noise of stopping distracting me. Because guess what, as an example from a kid's perspective, and I said this to you a while ago, that we went to the zoo. I've got to take a time out to chill because that 5 minutes rest gives 90% better time for the kids.
Yeah.
And annoyingly for me, who tells me that? The wife says that, and you kind of go, well, yeah, okay. And it's annoying because it's right.
Yeah. I had that again today because I've had a real week of fatigue where I normally sleep in the afternoon if I'm fatigued, and it's really weird because it's normally for about an hour, bang on an hour. And this afternoon, Jules, we'd had a meeting online and it wasn't particularly taxing. It was quite nice. And after that, I thought, what shall I do next? I feel quite focused. And Jules said, I'm just going to take some time to switch off and I'm going to go and read my book for a minute. And I thought, what do I do? Because I actually feel quite focused, but I feel like I should rest. So I did rest, and I'm glad I did, because I can actually recognize that I've had a pattern over the last week. And if I probably don't, it might have even kicked in now where I'm not feeling as focused as I should be, whereas I feel absolutely brilliant now. So,
and that's that thing where you can extend it to others, though. So from that honesty perspective, the bit I really found helped me in the early stages was the honesty from the occupational therapist. The honesty, and I know literally when as soon as I came over, I said, look, let's be clear. I don't really want to. I've worked in the industry for a long time. I know how people have used occupational therapy before to avoid being in work. Actually, do you know what? All I'm interested in is let's tick this box, let's go, and let me crack on. It's like, well, actually, she was really excited when I first told her that I was resting, having been that person that says, I'm not 80 years old. I don't need to have a nap. I'm okay with it. But at the same time, there's a story that I told, fully assuming that everything I was saying was right about the fact that we were hosting a barbecue. We had friends over, and me being the man of the barbecue, I'm looking after it. I'm doing bits, etc., etc. One of my friends came over and said, "Do you want me to take over now? Do you want to go and have a rest?" So I went upstairs and had a rest for a bit. Came down and I tell the story to a group full of people because I told my friends this and I was comfortable and in that comfortable environment of going off. Actually, what had happened was Nick had said to my mate, and she picked on one of the ones that was a good one to that I was prepared to hand over the reins of the barbecue to. She'd said to him, "Don't do it," and she'd then had the conversation with some of the others about the fact that actually he needs to rest at times. But guess what? That point I'd said earlier around it's a hidden disability. Why are you trying to put yourself here? I suffer with this.
It is what that word that you mentioned earlier is, that acceptance, and he still struggles with accepting some of the issues or the difficulties that you live with on a daily basis. And Anne has said, people we were talking about interrupting, people over talking each other is hard to follow and melts her brain.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Anne. Yeah, I'm definitely with you. Anne's just put in the chat that comment there, and I get that massively. The other night we went out to our favourite Indian restaurant, and I was sitting there, sort of in the middle of the room, and I just said to Jules, "This is really difficult." It wasn't particularly busy, but it also wasn't particularly noisy, but it just melted my brain.
Yeah.
Whereas I can go into a room with really loud music on, but if I'm focusing on the music, that's okay because it's one noise.
Yeah, and likewise, if I went in with you, I might be okay. But and like right now, the fact that it's only you guys that I can see, that works. If there's 6 or 7 people on the screen or whatever, and you don't know whether to pause for that person to interject, it's where it becomes harder. And you're really right about that acceptance piece. I from a government perspective, I've done all of the bits to the fact that I am registered disabled, and it's very clear. It's but actually that word almost has a stigma to it yourself that you kind of don't accept. Likewise, and there are times when, don't get me wrong, there are times when it works absolutely brilliantly, and where my wife is my carer, and what does that mean? That means that by using the brain injury card or using something else or whatever, we get a day out with the kids a little bit cheaper. But guess what? We get to go into the zoo like that. But guess what? Part of the reason is because he's going to have to go off in for 10 minutes every hour because he can't look at the red panda with the kids because he's been looking for too long.
Yeah. And Anne says something very, very similar. She's on a 5-minute rule. She needs to rest after 5 minutes, and bless you, suffering from really terrible fatigue. It is, it's the, I don't know what the right word is, it's scourge or something. It's one of the worst things because the the roll-on effect of the fatigue is immense.
Yeah. I mean, I suffer with vestibular migraines as well, so the looking down bits can get me. So again, from a humour perspective, it's quite okay when you first come out of the hospital. When loading and unloading the dishwasher is quite tricky. You didn't categorise it at that point, but actually, do you know what? And it's where things like work have been very supportive about the fact that it means that I need a sit-stand desk, because actually looking down at a keyboard for too long or looking up at a bit, I think, and actually accepting it and taking it because it's there for you for that reason, is a nice thing almost.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that as well, because I struggle looking up there, this way and up that way. So
And
it's
also,
and behind me, yeah. So if I'm driving as well, I've got to look over my shoulder. That can be quite difficult. So I have to make sure I really slow down, and I look and spend a lot of conscious time on that as well, which
Yeah.
makes driving long periods, especially on busy roads, quite difficult as well.
that's why I do it.
That's why Jules tends to do that quite a lot. So we just got to about 6 o'clock. I just wanted to ask you one more main thing, really, and this is something that Jules and I don't have to deal with on a daily basis, but obviously you do. You've got I think you said a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old or something.
Yeah.
What's it like having kids around you all the time? Because obviously one of them has not known any different, and one of them was at quite a young age when you suffered your brain injury, but they don't always tend to think, like, I'm going to be really quiet.
No, and it's tricky. It's arguably trickier for Nicola at times, where she knows that I'm trying to balance that and trying to work out when to interject. And do you know what, Aidan? Just carry on speaking, and it's fine. I can wipe out that noise. But at the same time, there are benefits to it as well. So my eldest will get things out of cupboards for me. He will go to do certain bits. He will know that he's got better memory than me. So guess what? I will say out loud quite a lot to him. Oh, remind me that I need to get you some crackers later. Remind me that I need to do this later. Why? Because it kind of helps me to remember by saying it out loud. But at the same time,
does he remind you to get the chocolate?
He doesn't need. He doesn't need to do that. I hide it from him, and that's left. But you get the bits the other way as well, where he's perfectly allowed to, or perfectly embraced in that, and it's almost semi-embarrassing the other way, where you can look. He was 3 when it happened. This 3-year-old gets it really, really well.
That's good.
Why don't I? Why can't I? Why don't I see it to get that? But then at the same time, you know what? You still have that bit of. We talk about it, I guess, rightly, about it being a life-changing event and stuff like that. And I guess my youngest is a good sign of that bit the other way. Of, guess what? My suspicion is, to anybody, 2 kids isn't just as easy as 1. They don't just instantly form into that very, very same instant compatibility. They're both boys, which surely that means that even fits even nicer into that idealistic element. Of course it doesn't. They are different, and it's pacing yourself with that is tricky at times. Like I said, the Zoo is a good example of, you know what, actually, if I take 10 minutes now, they're going to get much better time out of me.
Yeah,
it's true. And I mean, again, you live with them all the time. We've got grandkids who, when we go and visit them, they can be really, really noisy. Going to a kids' party is really difficult for me. I find that noise and that movement around the room of kids running around is quite difficult. And at the end of the day, the kids are not doing anything wrong. So it can be really, really hard. And also it can be really hard because you don't want to feel like you're the person that's saying, can you tell all your kids to stop having fun?
Like you guys will manage other bits. You kind of, from a relationship perspective, you manage that bit of, like, you know what, Nick will say to me sometimes, that is going to be the worst case scenario for you, because you're going to be, and your point about the Indian restaurant, if there's no soft furnishings, if it's a very wooden or brick area, the sound's just going to bounce off if you're sat in the middle of the room rather than on the outskirts of the room. And yes, there's a lot of different tactics you can use to kind of help it. I want to say soften it, because the soft furnishings, etc., do help. But also at the same time, that bit that says, do you know what? Actually, an excuse to leave a 2-year-old's birthday party is quite a nice thing. So yes, so he had his birthday party on Monday, or a pre-birthday party, and it was at a soft play, and that particular environment would be almost take the worst. And even the fact that they've got like disco lights thing going around. Did I want to be there for him? Yes. But what did I do there as a kind of slight kind of balance of that? I shut up more than normal, which is a big tick. But also I picked individual conversations. So I might well be talking to Jules, and just Jules. And actually everybody else can go off and do their bits and be doing bits. I'm going to talk and concentrate on that, and therefore I'm lucky that I can concentrate on that bit, and everything else seems to be peripheral to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. It was really, really good and insightful. I'm just aware of time now, so we've been going for around about 35 minutes. There is one more thing, so I'm just going to give you a chance to think about this one, because we talked about dad jokes, and obviously we have a big love of dad jokes. So one of the things that brain injury gave me was a fear of going over speed bumps, but I'm slowly getting over them. So if you have a dad joke for us,
I've got a hump about the fact you've just given me that one. Just to leave you on that other bombshell, just on a brilliant piece, and how the kids adapt to it and stuff like that. We go into a clothing shop to get his school jumper. His first ever school jumper. First time we've been into this clothing shop. We walk into the clothing shop. Nothing has been said by anybody. My eldest pipes up and says, "Don't do any of your dad jokes to the cashier because they're just not funny." And I'm like, wow, brutal.
Drop the mic.
Very brutal.
Fair play. If it had been done it to someone else, I'd have given him a round of applause.
Brilliant. We've got one more comment from Anne here as well, which says, "I've been told that I have sensory overload and to wear tinted glasses and sound reducing earplugs." And that's a really, really good tip. One we've come across quite a lot as well, haven't we?
Yeah. And Anne, if you've got time to respond, do they work for you? Particularly, I'm interested with the tinted glasses.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
just whilst Aaron's typing that response, I'm going to be trying those soon. So I have tests on it and stuff like that for the vestibular migraine bits. Similarly, whilst Aaron's typing that response, hats and hoods really, really help.
Yeah.
So again, we're in that modern era of the headphones is okay now. People wandering around talking on headphones or Bluetooth headphones on is kind of the norm now. Does that make me sound old by saying it?
No. Thank you.
Thumbs up, Jules.
No, that's a thumbs up to Anne. She said the glasses work. So that's really interesting. Thank you. That's good to know.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Guess where we're going tomorrow?
I do actually, to be fair, I do actually wear sunglasses quite a lot, especially when I'm playing sports and running now, whereas I never used to. So that's good. Charlotte's also said I have tinted glasses too, and they help. So I think that's probably a big thumbs up for them.
Yeah, and just all I would say from that point is because I've had an eye appointment today, and I had the bit where I was testing it. Don't just grab a pair of sunglasses and say, do they work? Look at different types of tints, because different tints will have a different thing. And top inside tip, because this is what they were getting me to do the other day, was potentially put the tints on, take a book with you or something like that, read bits of a book in the shop, and go, actually, do you know what? This feels clearer with the yellow, not as clear with the dark.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Tip.
Actually, that is very true, because the sunglasses I got, I used to buy the cheap ones off of the street vendors on holiday and that, and then I actually got some proper UV resistant ones, and they were really, really cheap actually. I bought them from Decathlon Sports Shop for about £10 or £12 or something, so they weren't hugely expensive, and they definitely worked. And a few times I put the old cheap ones on and realised that they don't work, so it is worth looking at what works.
Definitely thoughts on sunglasses can polarize the audience though.
Yeah. I love it.
like that.
So on that note, we're going to thank you, Aidan, for your time tonight, this evening, or this tonight, or whatever time you're listening in, because people are in different time zones. And that's really, really insightful. The biggest, most important thing is sharing lived experiences, which we can continue to do through Brain or Shine. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find everything we do on our website, which is brainourshine.com. So we have future webinars. These are once a month. We sometimes have an extra one, which is RC Experts, which is hosted by Slater and Gordon, firm of legal experts. I think that's probably the easiest word. So bi-monthly webinars. We also have a podcast, which you can listen into. We have a blog that you can read and a regular newsletter. But obviously pick the ones that work for you, because we appreciate that brain injury is easy to overwhelm yourself with information. So you can just dip in and out of whatever is going to work for you.
Yeah, it works for you, because some people prefer to read, some people prefer to listen. So therefore we have it in the different formats, so you can pick what's best for you.
Yeah, and also we have our peer-to-peer support brain injury group on Facebook as well, which is completely private, and you can come along and join that. Thank you, Anne, as well. Anne says, thank you, Aidan, Jules and Mark, which is lovely.
Thank you for joining, and for your contribution.
Yeah, have a great evening, everybody. Remember, brainorshine.com, there'll be a recording available of this straight away, which Kate has just asked. So I just answered your questions, it popped up there. Kate said I missed that, and you'll be able to watch it back. And it'll also go onto our social media. So thank you, everybody, and have a lovely evening, and we shall catch you all soon.
Bye-bye.